servicing that debt goes up. This is Justin Trudeau's economy. This is 7 years of Justin Trudeau. He has given us the highest inflation in 40 years, the fastest rise in interest rates, young people who can't find a place to live. He has given us record food bank use. He has forced single mothers to put water in their children's milk because they cannot afford their groceries. That is Justin Trudeau's record. How has he done this? Well, the cost of government is driving up the cost of living. $500 billion of inflationary deficits funded by money printing means more dollars chasing fewer goods, which bids up prices. Inflationary taxes, like the carbon tax, increases the cost for businesses and workers to make the goods we buy. The more Liberals spend, the more things cost. It is Justin inflation. Our streets are increasingly ruled by gangsters and gun smugglers who are destroying our neighborhoods in all the big cities of the country. The shootings in Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, the tent cities that have overtaken our streets since Justin Trudeau became Prime Minister. He has made it easy for people to get dangerous drugs. He's even funded some of these drugs. And he's lowered the penalties for the violent criminals who bring the drugs and the crime to our neighborhoods. We all believe that a young person who makes a mistake in their youth should have a chance to get rehabilitated and start over again. But when we see offenders who've committed 40, 50, 60 offenses, convicted again and again and again, released back into the neighborhoods to kill our people, then that is a threat to public safety. We saw it in Saskatchewan where the mass stabbing rampage, the killers had already been convicted, almost 50.
Across the country, I think in Nova Scotia they had to close down some hospital emergency rooms during the weekend. How do we solve this crisis? Should we privatize some of that service?
That is always a decision of provincial governments. They decide how to deliver health care. Our job is to provide stable funding to the provinces for health. The other thing we can do is speed up recognition of medical credentials for doctors and nurses. We have thousands of doctors and nurses in Canada who can't work because they aren't licensed. And that's why my plan to get them licensed quickly, remove the gatekeepers, and get them licensed quickly is part of the solution to make our medical system work. But the system has suffered. I think the vaccine mandates went way too far and deprived our medical system across the country of very good people who could have been serving. And now we have shortages that are metastasizing across our country, and people are dying on wait lists. So we need to work with our provinces to solve that problem.
There's many nurses who have been trained here in Canada that can easily get started, but they're also being held up by this immigration backlog just because there isn't anyone that can go and print their card and cut it and give it to them. And that's holding back people from becoming nurses and becoming doctors. There's many that come to this country that don't have that card in their hand, and they also can't even get a mortgage or send their kids to school because of that. So immigration backlogs is something that we will tackle, and Pierre's been very clear about what we would do for foreign credential recognition as well. That would help to alleviate the stress that's been put on our healthcare system today.
On international students, first of all, conservatives believe in lifting the 20-hour cap on the amount of work hours per week, so that those students who choose to work more can earn more money, and we can help tackle the black market that has resulted from students forced to work under the table by that artificial cap. Secondly, we think that it should be faster and easier for international students who've met all of their obligations here to become permanent residents and eventually citizens, because that is an enormous victory for Canada. If you take someone who's highly educated at 24 years old, they'll then make a 40 or 50 year contribution to the work to the Canadian economy. Third, I think we need to find out what's going on with international students' levels of suicide. We're hearing these stories of suicide. What's causing that? Is it isolation? Is it poverty? Is there an abuse? I don't know the answer to that question, but we have to find out, because these stories are becoming far too common. We're hearing them in Vancouver, Toronto, right across the country. And Jazz, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, you know, for the last 2 years, I served as or a year and a half, I served as a critic for immigration, and the problems that international students have been going through was one of our main focuses. You know, out in Surrey, when we look at Surrey, there's a food bank called Granonics Food Bank. 80% of the users that go there are international students. So there is a huge concern, and this is tied in with the
Home in Brampton or Mississauga, and now, surprise, rates are going up. Well, who could have predicted it? Well, I did predict it. I said that if you cause inflation, you're going to drive up interest rates. And that is an inevitable, just as night follows day. Frankly, Jagmeet Singh is part of the problem. He supported all of the money printing and the deficits that led to this crisis in the first place. So they inflated the bubble, and now what are they doing? They're popping the bubble. And all these deficits that continue to do is drive the problem worse, because when the government runs a deficit, they're buying more out of the economy and driving up the cost of things. Secondly, they're borrowing more out of the economy, which means they're competing with a scarce amount of credit. Well, I'm not going to interfere with that. I believe in a united India. I believe in freedom of expression. People can express their views on that question however they like. It's not my role to tell them what they have to think or what they have to say. We live in a free country, and people can express their views freely on that, just like any other issue. It takes, on average, you take the average building permit time for everything from a house to a mine, it's 250 days in Canada. In South Korea, it's 28 days. The Slovak Republic is slower than Canada, out of the entire OECD. So if you have money and you want to invest it to get a return, you'll shop around the world. You say, where am I going to get a return on this? They say, well, if I go to Canada, I'm going to have to wait 6 years before my project is approved, in which time there's no income being generated. They're going to say, forget it. They're going to go to Singapore, Switzerland, Australia, New Zealand, or countless other places where things get built quickly. We don't have to lower our environmental standards, we just have to implement them more quickly. Quite right that Canada has been built by a Portuguese hard work, and we are blessed by that fact. If I could make one brief diversion, my wife and I actually got married in Portugal, so I love the country and its people. Look, we need to streamline and speed up the process of allowing people to come here to work, become permanent residents, and then citizens. On lumber, because we do produce so much, we want to have access to the American market. As you know, the Americans hit us with a softwood lumber tariff. They did this actually back in the early 2000s. Prime Minister Harper negotiated a resolution. We actually got back $4 billion worth of those tariffs. But then when that deal expired, Trudeau has been unable to renew it. And as a result, we're paying tariffs on the lumber that we export to the United States of America. That hurts our lumber sector. And we want maximum revenue from every single tree that we harvest. How many people work in farming and how many people work in factories? I think that we should have a free enterprise system where workers, businesses, and customers make their own decisions based on the price signals that exist. The free market is the system of voluntary exchange for work for wages, investment for interest, and product for payment. There is no central planning that can fix that, that can improve upon that. Governments that try to run the economy by force always leave people in desperate poverty. We saw that in the Soviet Union, we see it in North Korea, we see it in Cuba. Everywhere where the government controls the economy, the people are poor. So I'm not trying to evade your question. I'm telling you that the government can't decide, shouldn't decide, how much agriculture, industry, technology, or any other sector we have. The marketplace should decide that in an open and free economy. Markets in the US. So how do we export natural gas? We get the facilities approved. There's a business case for it. Same with oil. We shouldn't be importing 130,000 barrels of overseas oil, but we can't get Alberta's and Western Canada oil to the Eastern Canadian markets. We need to have pipelines and other projects while incentivizing the companies to grow greener at the same time. So, in other words, we need to produce more competitively priced goods if we want our exports to go up, and that means getting the government out of the way and off the backs of our farmers, our entrepreneurs, and our workers.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we've got 37,000 buildings in the federal inventory. Many of them were underutilized before the pandemic.
37,000?
1,000, yes, right across the country. And the square foot per employee has always been very high in the federal buildings, which means there's a lot of vacancy. But that was before the pandemic, and then since then there's been a increase in remote work. So people are working from home, patching in by the internet, and that's fine.